Welcome to your community. This is your hometown. This is Walton Entertainment. This is where you can hear from the community and those making a difference. We explore topics, local festivals, arts and entertainment, and local news. For this program and much more, visit us online at yourlocalstream.com. That's yourlocalstream.com.
Good morning. Thank you for watching. I'm Dina Huff, the Executive Director for the Partnership for Families, Children, and Youth. And this morning I've asked Lauren Gregory to join me because this month, being April, is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And Lauren comes to us from a Child's Voice Child Advocacy Center. Sorry, that word always makes me stumble,
yes,
but
it's hard to say.
Yes, it is. But welcome, Lauren. I know
you.
Y'all have a lot of stuff going on, so why don't we start by you giving us a little background information about the center?
Sure. So, like Dina said, I come from a Child's Voice Child Advocacy Center. It's kind of hard to say, but we're a nonprofit located in Social Circle, and we're there because we serve Walton County and Newton County, so it's right in the middle, convenient for our clients. But a Child Advocacy Center, it's a model, so there's a lot of them in the state. There's about 50 in the state, about 900 in the nation, and some even in other countries. But the idea is that we serve child victims of crime and abuse. So there's a child abuse protocol in every county, and it says that when a child makes a disclosure of abuse, when they tell someone that they've experienced abuse, or if someone suspects they've been abused or has reason to believe a child's experienced abuse, they come to our center. And we provide a forensic interview, a medical exam if needed to make sure bodies are healthy, and then we do a lot of family support. And we do that in partnership with other investigative agencies, so law enforcement, the Division of Family and Children Services, or DFACS, the mental health providers, school systems. We all work together to make sure that these children have all the services they need.
Well, what can the parents do if a parent suspects this may be going on? What's the step they need to take? Yeah,
so always reporting. There is a hotline. You actually have the poster right there. I saw it on the way in. I know y'all can't see it, but there's a hotline that you can call if you suspect your child has been abused, or you can always call law enforcement, especially if you think your child is in immediate danger. It's always a crime for a child to experience abuse. So you can call 911, you can report to law enforcement, and then there's the DFACS hotline, which I can tell you, I don't know if it'll be up on the screen, but it's 1-855-GA-CHILD. And that's where you call. DFACS and law enforcement report back and forth to each other, so you can call one or the other. If you want to call both, you can. But definitely just, if you have that suspicion, always believe your child. Always err on the side of caution. Children rarely make up abuse. The statistic is less than 10%, and I've even seen it as low as 2%. So research kind of varies, but it's less than 10% of children make up abuse. So it's always good to believe your child, trust your gut, because a report doesn't mean that somebody's going to jail or a kid's going into foster care. It just means that we're going to start the process and we're going to ask some more questions. The kid will get an interview, which is really child friendly. It's not scary. It's not an interrogation. That's one of the benefits of the Child Advocacy Center, is that they get to talk to a neutral professional who's trained to talk to kids. So they aren't talking to a law enforcement officer. They're not talking to the DFACS person who maybe they've been told that DFACS will take them away. Kind of removes all that stress, so it's a more neutral, more child-friendly experience. So definitely always report it, even if the person who you suspect is doing it is someone you know and trust, because typically, especially in cases of sexual abuse, which are the cases we see the most of, it's 90% of the time the abuse is done by someone known and trusted to the family, which can make it really hard to believe it. It is unbelievable, truly.
And embarrassing to the family.
For sure. And for the child. A lot of kids don't tell when they've experienced abuse, or it takes them a long time to tell. So maybe it happened weeks, months, or even years ago. It's still important to believe them because it is scary and embarrassing, like you said, and hard to tell. So that's why we always say to believe them, support them, If something happened and maybe it didn't happen, we'll find out pretty quickly. But again, that rarely happens.
Well, have you all had an increase in your numbers since COVID began?
We've stayed pretty steady. We didn't really close, so we, kind of like a lot of people, we worked from home and adjusted, but we still came in to do interviews and serve families. So we didn't really slow down, which we thought we would. We did start seeing different types of cases. So during the time of sheltering in place, when people were at home, because a lot of children are abused by family members, we expect that more kids might have experienced abuse. It was stressful, people were worried, people were stuck at home. So we expect our numbers to go up, but we haven't really seen that yet. But we did see a shift towards like child witness to domestic violence. Domestic violence cases went up. Wow. And so if a child is in the home when domestic violence occurs, we'll talk to the child. So we saw some of those. And then we've also seen a lot of internet-based crimes. So that may not mean that the child may not have physically come in contact with someone, but maybe they've been, somebody's sent them messages, or they've, there's been pictures exchanged or anything like that. So we do those interviews too. So we've seen a lot more of those. So while our numbers haven't increased, we do expect that they will later on.
Right.
Like I said, it can take a long time for kids to disclose abuse. Also, people who typically report abuse is the school system a lot, and kids weren't in school for a long time. So we expect that we'll kind of see those cases come up later over time. So while we stayed busy, we also expect that we'll see some more.
Yeah. Well, I know y'all have several great trainings for businesses or churches or anybody, actually.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about some of those programs.
Sure. So we have kind of 3 main trainings that we offer, which I think you've been through all of them. So those 3 we offer, they're kind of, it's scripted and it's more of a standardized training. A lot of those come with continuing education credits for people who professionally need them, but they're also great for parents. We're also available as a resource, though. If somebody wants us to come in and just talk to a group, for 10, 20 minutes, we can do that too. But the 3 kind of trainings, one is a mandated reporter training. So in Georgia, any adult who volunteers or works with children in any capacity is legally required to report child abuse. So we train those adults on how do you recognize abuse, what are the signs, and then how do you report it. So we do that one. That one's free for community members, so we love to offer that. We also do one called Stewards of Children, which you've even hosted before. We've done right across the hall. Stewards of Children is specifically about sexual abuse. Like we said earlier, sexual abuse can be shameful and scary and embarrassing, and people don't like to talk about it as much. So this training, the design is that it helps us learn how to talk about it, how to recognize it, how to set boundaries for people in our lives so that the opportunity to perpetrate sexual abuse isn't there anymore. And then again, how to respond, how to report, how to react. That one's great because it's video and discussion based, so it's interactive, really informative, and leaves you with easy steps to protect your kids. So that's for everybody, parents, professionals, whoever is interested. That one, there is a cost associated with that one, so sometimes people sponsor it, which I think is what we did here, which is really great. And it's also online. We prefer the facilitated version so that you get to kind of discuss and ask questions. But we certainly, if somebody can only do it online, we want them to do it. So that one's called Stewards of Children. And then we have a new one, newer, it's not as new now, called Connections Matter, which is really designed for everybody. It's all about childhood trauma or adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, if you've heard about that. And it just helps you understand how can we support people in our community to help people who've experienced trauma, who's a lot of people. How do we help them become more resilient? So how do you be a good neighbor? How do you be a good friend? How do you be a good family member? I did one of those yesterday, actually, virtually, which went pretty well. No, we did the in-person a couple years ago. So we offer that one as well. We really believe that it's an adult's responsibility to protect children, which is why we do so much adult-focused education. The school system does some training with kids. Training's not really the right word. Education with kids. There was a law passed a couple years ago that requires that age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate sexual abuse prevention is in every grade from pre-K to ninth grade. So that's been going on. A lot of times it's not, your kid may not come home and know that they got sexual abuse prevention training,
Right.
but just some age-appropriate education about maybe body safety, what parts are okay to touch, what parts aren't okay, what do you do? So we like that two-generation idea where the school system does the education for kids, and then we make sure adults are educated so that they know how to protect kids, how to report abuse, to believe their kids, all those kinds of things.
That's a lot of great information.
Thank you.
So do you have any exciting events or anything that you've done for the month of April?
Yes, we've been very busy this month.
Yes.
So something we like to do in April, you'll see our pinwheels here. This is our symbol of child abuse prevention. The pinwheel represents healthy, happy childhoods. You can't see a pinwheel spinning and not feel happy and feel good. So the blue pinwheel is the symbol for child abuse prevention. So we've put those out around town. There's some at the library, and there's some information inside the library for people to see, and a couple other places, just to bring awareness to the issue of child abuse prevention. We've done some trainings, like I talked about. We've done a couple Stewards of Children trainings. We did the Connections Matter yesterday. And then we've also gone around and done proclamations at a lot of the city meetings and the county commissioner meetings. We like to do that so the people who make our policies and lead our communities understand the issue.
Right.
So I've been to the city of Covington, the city of Social Circle, the city of Monroe, Walton County Board of Commissioners. We're doing an event in Newton County Friday, which isn't probably any of you guys, but we're doing that where the commissioner there is going to come do an event. Walton County DFACS did an event that I actually didn't get to go to, but it sounded wonderful. Just a community event, free ice cream. Which
Oh,
was
I went to that, yes.
so
it
nice.
was very nice.
Yes,
and we had a balloon release.
Awesome.
And I would just like to report that the DFACS director reported at our collaborative meeting that they have almost 200 in foster care. So
Wow.
that kind of, that's a huge number. So I think trainings such as these, trainings that you all offer, is so important for the education purposes for our families in Walton County.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. And we're available as a resource. We are on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have a LinkedIn page too. So we post a lot there about what's going on with us, resources, information, and then our website has a lot more in depth too. We also have videos of our center, which can be really great. We'd love to have you come for a tour, but that's a little harder to schedule and not everybody can get down there, so you can see some of the center online. A lot of people don't know we exist until they need to come to us, and we'd like people to know about us, and we'd
Right.
like to be a resource. So people can call us if they ever have questions, if they ever have concern about a child. I will say, we typically just say, you need to make a report, because
Right.
we can't, if you're the
Directly,
person who knows what's going on, you need to do that.
Yeah.
And since we work as a team, there has to be the investigation
Right.
ongoing for the child to come receive our services. We can still connect with resources. We'll send people to you. We'll send people to counselors in the area, that kind of thing. But for suspected cases of abuse, it's always that report to law enforcement or DFACS. But I'd love to give you all our phone number, so if you need to call us and ask us questions, you can. So that number is 770-464-0082. And online, we're A Child's Voice CAC for Child Advocacy Center, which we know is hard to say. But that's what we do, is we make sure that kids have a voice. That's why we're called A Child's Voice. It's hard for kids to talk about hard things like this.
Oh, yeah.
So we really like to have this safe, neutral space where they can do that. And then we make sure that they have all the resources they need. So we do a lot of follow-up. Every case is tracked and followed through, and we make sure that everything that needs to happen happens. Yeah, so we're available for the community as a resource.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Dina.
I know you'll continue to stay busy after April, so.
Yes.
And I would just like to put this out there. If we have community members and we have enough people, we're happy to host Family Connection, the partnership here. We're happy to host some trainings through Lauren and her group. So if I have enough people contact me, church, if you have a different civic group or whatnot, or if you just have a bunch of parents that have questions, should I report this? What should I look for? These trainings are wonderful. Like Lauren said, we hosted one here and we've been through a couple of others. So if you're interested in doing that and you want to call me to ask, look, if I have a group of how many would you?
I mean, we could do it for 4 or 5. We
Okay.
like about 10, 15.
Right.
Because the discussion is always so rich.
Yes,
People bring their
yes.
own experience. So 10
Okay.
to 15 is great.
Okay.
Even like neighborhood groups,
Yeah. Yeah,
any
definitely.
group of adults
Okay.
is great. Even, sometimes I've trained like 16, 17-year-olds who work or volunteer with younger kids.
Absolutely.
So yeah, any group of
Okay.
almost adults or adults
Okay.
is perfect.
Perfect. So if you're interested in that, just give me a call here. My direct line at the partnership is 770-207-3175. And thank you, Lauren, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank JoJo and the 1025 Church for allowing us to use their beautiful church and for our luncheons. And with that, I'll ask JoJo to give us a welcome and an invitation, and it'll be followed by the close.
Hey, we always want to welcome you here at 1025 Church. We're excited to be able to host this each and every month. Pastor Tommy wishes obviously every time to be here, but he has a funeral that he is preaching down in Columbus. But he wanted me to let you know that he loves you, he misses you, and he hopes to see you again next month. Let me pray for you. Father, we love you. We thank you for your goodness, your grace. Lord, we thank you for the chamber. We thank you for the networking. And God, we believe that every good thing comes from above. So every work of business that you provided to these businesses, to these people here, God, that came from you. So we say thank you. We pray that you continue to bless us in our endeavors this year. In Jesus' name, amen.
And if you would please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to thank our sponsors today, Aquaterra Recycling, Treatment, and Crawford, Oil, and Second Chance Law. Tammy Hill of Aquaterra was unable to join us today due to a death in her family. So please remember them in your thoughts and prayers. They did give us a little infomercial I'd like to read to you. Aquaterra was started in 1997 as an industrial wastewater treatment. As time went by, things changed and we grew into a full-service environmental company. We now have a fleet of 13 vacuum trucks and tankers ranging from 3,000-gallon vacuum trucks to 5,000-gallon vacuum tankers, along with a box truck, a roll-off truck, roll-off boxes, and vacuum boxes. We've just acquired a 2,150-gallon liquid ring vacuum truck for sludge removal. We also offer tank, UST, and AST removal, drum removal, disposal, industrial cleaning, and the list goes on. We have a variety of services and clients from city projects to gas stations, and you'll have brochures on your tables for you to take more information. And at this time, I'd also like to ask David Boyle to come up and give us a quick commercial on Crawford and Boyle and Second Chance Law. David?
Yeah, my name is David Boyle. I'm one of the attorneys at Crawford & Boyle. My partner Eric Crawford is sitting over here. We want to thank you for the opportunity to sponsor the event here. And we're launching something new that actually I want to thank the legislators about. I know you all are going to be talking about this past legislative session, but previously, last year, you passed Senate Bill 288, which went into effect January 1st. It's basically known as the Second Chance Law. That allows people who have previous criminal records to be able to clean their records up. There's a certain process you can go through to clean certain misdemeanors and even some felonies off your record. And we've got a Second Chance Law we've created. The law is somewhat complicated to navigate, and if you go to secondchance.law, there is a way that you can actually check to see if you are eligible. I'm not talking about you in particular, but if you know someone who has a previous criminal record, everyone's got someone in the family who's got something, but if you've got a situation where it's holding you back from being able to get a certification or a license, or to get into college, or to get another job or advancement, This is a great way that the legislator has passed this to get these things off of your record so that you're able to advance yourself and be more prosperous and more productive citizen. So I want to thank the gentleman who was, the vote was essentially no opposition to it with regard to Senate Bill 288. Just went into effect in January, and we're in the process of filing those cases for people to try to get their records cleaned up. So thank you, gentlemen, for doing that. We certainly appreciate it. It's a great law, and hopefully we'll be able to help a lot of people out with that. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Now I'd like to introduce our program speakers. If you would come up and join me as I call your name. State Senator Bill Couser was unable to attend. He's on a legislative trip with legislators from other states. State Senator Burt Jones. State Representative Tom Kirby. And State Representative Bruce Williams. We are excited to hear from our great delegation today, and thank you for coming. Now I'll turn it over to our Chamber President, Terry Smiley.
Thank you. Thank y'all for being here with us today. We have some canned questions we're going to ask, and then we're going to open it up. So y'all be thinking about what questions you have for these guys, and we will ask those at the end. So, our first question is, can you each tell us about a different piece of legislation that passed this year that Walton County's citizens or businesses need to know about? Yes, sir. That'd be y'all.
Thank you, Terry, and it's good to be here. It's good to be back in Walton County. There was no reference made. There's usually a reference made to this being a Piggly Wiggly building, grocery store, and I like that because I grew up working at a local Piggly Wiggly in Jackson, Georgia, and bagging groceries. So I didn't know Piggly Wiggly could look so good. So it's good to be here today, and I appreciate the question. You know, this legislative session was an interesting one for a lot of different reasons, but if there's one thing I could point to that I was proud of from not just Walton County, but throughout the district that I represent, which is, I've got 9 counties. So the portion of Walton County that I have is Social Circle, Walnut Grove, and Jersey, but I go all the way down to Bibb County and over to Milledgeville, Walton County as well. So I've got all the Lake Oconee, Sinclair, Jackson areas there. But the broadband initiative that we've been working on, rural broadband, we've been working on for quite some time now. And our EMCs are leading the charge now and trying to implement that into a lot of our communities. And I don't think there's been any better time for us to realize with this last year than what we've gone through with all that working from home, doing school from home, and everything else, the need for rural broadband. And so I was happy about that legislation and finally coming to fruition there. And I'm looking forward to all our good EMCs and co-ops throughout the district implementing that program for our rural citizens.
That's great. I know, raise your hand if you have issues with Wi-Fi service around here. Yeah, that's a good one. That will help our folks. Tom, we'll go next.
All right, well, thank you. Thank y'all for being here and inviting us. Probably a little bill you didn't maybe notice. Senate Bill 156 that I carried in the House. A really important bill. One of the things through the years, we have maintained our AAA bond rating. And that's extremely important. It affects our budget, it affects our bond package, it affects a lot of things in every county in this state that we keep that bond rating that strong with all the agencies. Unfortunately, this year the state auditor had to actually do a footnote because we just couldn't get the information from the Department of Labor that we need about the CARES Act and that money for unemployment and how much do we owe the federal government. And because of that, and because of the way they handle things over there, we actually put in a bill that going to appoint an auditor for the Labor Department to work independently of anybody in that agency over there, just so our state auditor can get the information he needs to maintain that AAA bond rating. As Greg Abbott, our state auditor, as he said, we can do 1 year with a footnote, but if we do the second year with a footnote, that AAA bond rating will be gone. That's going to hurt our interest rates, that's going to hurt our bond package, that's going to hurt our budget, that's going to hurt every county and a lot of things we do. So, didn't get a lot of fanfare, but an extremely important bill and one I think is going to help us in the long run.
All right, thanks, Tom. Bruce?
Yeah, this again, join the echo of saying how much I appreciate the opportunity to come before the Walton Chamber and give this legislative update. But I kind of like Senator Jones down here. Advisor up here, JoJo. And when I walked in, I almost didn't recognize the place because I've never been in this room with tables in place. We've been living through this whole pandemic, just socially distanced, and it's good to see that we're beginning to get back to normal. On that note, I do really appreciate 1025's willingness, especially during this pandemic year, to make their church open to specifically the people and businesses of Walton County. Pastor Tommy has got a great ministry here. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to worship here, I'd encourage you to do that. So JoJo, tell Pastor Tommy we miss him today. It's the first time I've been in the building without him here. But thank you so much for the ministry y'all are doing for Christ in Walton County. To specifically answer the question about what piece of legislation I think might make the biggest difference to the businesses of Walton County, I'm going to start off with a question. How many folks in the room have a business that you're working for or own that's either an LLC or an S corporation? Did I see a show of hands? I suspect it'd be a lot. Most new businesses, when they're organized as one of those two entities for a lot of specific tax reasons. Well, I carried a bill this year that it will save you federal taxes if you have certain tax liabilities to the state. To keep it simple, any one of the LLCs that's a multi-member LLC, you know you have to file or an S corporation, you have to file a tax return on that entity. If you have a tax obligation in excess of $10,000 to the state, you can now, with this bill, you'll be able to pay your state income tax liability at your entity level. What that does for you is it lowers your adjusted gross income that hits your K1 and allows you to get around what's referred to as a SALT limitation on your individual tax return. That stands for your state and local taxes limitation. Under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed by the previous administration, or signed by the previous administration, that $10,000 limit is on your personal income tax return. This will, in effect, allow you to save federal taxes by taking advantage of this. It'll be elected, you don't have to do it. Most of your CPAs will get quickly up to speed for it, and it'll start in the next taxable year. I'd be happy to answer any questions offline on that subject, but I think that you'll find it to be a huge benefit to businesses that are doing well.
Great, thanks, Bruce. Okay, our next question is sort of two different parts. So the first part is, we know that you all have professions outside of serving at the Capitol. And so what is that profession and how do you juggle that during your 3-month session time? The second part of the question is, how do you use your profession in order to help make decisions on behalf of Walton County while you're in session?
Well, we've got a family small business over in Jackson, Georgia, and it's a multifaceted operation. So we're in retail, wholesale, convenience store, business, fast food, and also in insurance and real estate as well. And so we have about 2,000 employees company-wide, and it's number one, we got good people. Because if we didn't have good people working there, I couldn't do this public service work, you know. And so I'm fortunate to have that. You know, the main thing that I guess being involved in in businesses and being involved in small businesses in some capacities, you get a good idea of what legislation, how it will affect you, and as far as from whether it's from a permanent standpoint or a regulatory standpoint, it gives you a great perspective of what is good for business and what's not. And so I do appreciate when business people get into politics, because if you don't have that foundational knowledge, you know, at the Capitol they've got these people called lobbyists, and they can make anything sound good when they're talking to you. And if you don't have a good understanding or a good experience, basically, about how it could affect businesses like what we have in this room, you know, you could be passing something that's harmful as opposed to being helpful to your local communities and business leaders. So I always take that approach when I'm dealing with any kind of legislation at the Capitol.
All right. Well, I am the Human Resource Manager for Liggett and Platt here in Monroe. Regular full-time job, and first thing, I am very appreciative to them for allowing me to serve. It does take some strain, and from time to time, you know, I've got to juggle the schedule pretty hard. During the legislative session, most days I start here in Monroe at my office, bright and early, and then head down I-20, maybe a little quicker than the speed limit, but get down there relatively early in the floor session. I'm not always there at the start of the day when we have the devotional and some of the morning orders. We try to get there before we do the local legislation where we really start our business. So it is a juggle. Believe it or not, this year's actually was a little easier with all the Zoom meetings, doing the dual in-person and Zoom, both in the committee meetings and also here at Liggett at Platt. We of course gone to a lot of Zoom and Skype type meetings. So I was able to take a lot more video meetings from whether I'm at the office down at the Capitol or the office here in Monroe. That really helped me schedule my time a little better. But being a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation, as my boss at Liggett said, they get plenty of hours out of me, one way or the other, so they are supported. I've been in the manufacturing industry since 1988. And as the Vice Chairman of the Labor and Industry Committee, everything that goes through that committee directly affects what we do in manufacturing in most businesses. So every day I'm using my experience and my knowledge down there. This summer we're going to be working as a committee on two pieces of legislation. One is the misclassification of employees, codifying, just as a basis, codifying what they call the Sky King decision on what's an employee and what's a 1099 employee. Who gets that gets into a lot of detail, and this is going on in about 20 states right now. And also, right at the end of the last administration's term there in Washington, the federal Department of Labor came up with one, but now the current administration is wanting to throw it out. So, but it's obviously an issue that we've got to deal with on, especially some industries, construction industries, one on who's a 1099 subcontractor and who's an employee and what benefits, workers' comp, and all that goes with that. The other one that we're working on this summer is a new thing, fairly new, and it's earned wage access. And these are not payday lenders, but these are people that are paying people daily for their work for another company, as long as the company will allow, and the employee will allow them to share their payroll information with them. You know, that's not really something that we do or our weekly pay period out of Liggett, but more and more people, you know, with the Uber type stuff where they're used to getting immediate pay, you know, they work a day or 2 days and they need their money and they want it now. I mean, we hear that, this impatient society we live in. And this earned wage access has kind of sprung up, and it doesn't have a lot of, you know, it's legal to do in Georgia right now, they can do it. As long as it doesn't cross into our usury laws and some other things, but it's a new concept. It's going to take a while to work through, and that's part of the legislative process. But being an HR manager and understanding this and the benefits, you know, it's going to be a big thing that we look at this summer as we have a couple of meetings on.
Chris?
So, as I understand the question, is how does a legislator juggle the job, the duties with their business interests, and how does that affect their role? Do I have the gist of the question correct? So, as far as juggling, I think that specifically is a great question. Let's just think about it. The three of us are pretty accessible to the Capitol. Now, frankly, as your duties become more busier, you spend more and more time and more nights in Atlanta. But think about how large our state is and how long it takes to get from Waycross, Georgia to the state capitol. And then go back and pull up a list of the 180 House members and 56 senators that are spread throughout this state, and think about the sacrifice they make getting to the state capitol for basically 3 months a year. It just is mind-boggling to me, because we have very dedicated members from both parties, specifically in rural Georgia, that are farmers, teachers, merchants, in agriculture, timber, and things like that make a tremendous sacrifice to leave their families, especially when they have small children, and get to Atlanta for 3 months a year. But if you think about it, that's the beauty of a citizen legislature, and that's what we're talking about, is that you bring your life and skill experiences to the Capitol to make a difference for Georgia. These states that have year-round legislatures are crazy. I don't understand it. And wanting to be paid huge salaries and have big staffs. I like the fact that since the very beginning, that's the way our system's been set up. And coming from, we're still a big agricultural state, still the #1 business in Georgia, agriculture as a whole. But if you've ever thought about why the legislatures, most legislatures across the nation meet from January to March, well, think about it. In the fall, all the crops come in, and then you're going right into basically the Christmas season. So families want to be together. So from the very beginning, the state's General Assembly's meeting, most of them started meeting right after the Christmas holidays. So hence the January start. Our Constitution says it shall start on the second Monday of every January. And basically, we're limited by our state constitution to 40 days. Well, if it's a running shot clock, that's a month and 10 days. But we do take breaks. A lot of times, Mondays are off or Fridays are off to allow those people that are traveling from South Georgia to spend more time with their families. But that's kind of how the calendar got set up. I fully support it. Heart goes out to those people that make such a sacrifice, because I've always owned my own business, and it's been, my schedule's much more flexible. That's sort of a long-winded answer, but juggling depends on what your occupation, your age, and where you live in Georgia. It's different members.
Yeah, I never thought about how far some people actually drive to get to the Capitol. Yeah. Okay, so these next 4 questions that we have, anyone who wants to answer them, I just thought these might be some interesting questions. So, what was the most odd legislation passed this year?
I'll do one. We made the pecan the official state nut. Now, if you're concerned about the peanut farmers, remember the peanut is actually a legume. It's not a nut. So there's no controversy there. And those, for whoever struggled with this, now being originally just a country boy from Kentucky, I can explain this to you real simple. The pecan goes under the bed, the pecan's on the tree and in the pie.
I was just about to say, did y'all have a debate on pecan or pecan? But you just said that, so yeah, I agree with you. Okay, what was the most needed legislation passed this year?
Well, I mean, it's always the budget, and that's really the only obligation we have, constitutionally speaking. The bill he's referring to, the pecan bill, that was kind of nutty, but it, you like that, didn't you? It absolutely, there were some really interesting bills that came through this session that I was telling somebody the other day. I said, for every bad bill that we pass, we ought to repeal 3 bills that are on the books currently, you know, and we would have been able to repeal a lot of bills if that was the case in this legislative session, because there was some things that I thought was just, you know, I was like, what are we doing with this bill, you know, and the pecan bill is a good example, but the budget was actually better than we thought it was going to be. We were worried last year when we were leaving that we were going to have to make significant cuts all across the board, and because we were worried about, you know, what our economy was going to look like. But Georgia came out probably better than any other state in the last year, and the budget and the revenue dollars showed that. So that was a good thing to have because when you start cutting budgets, you start cutting services and you start cutting employees and things of that nature, and that's never a fun thing to do. So I was happy that our budget came back very strong because we didn't expect it this time last year.
Bruce, anything to add to either one of those?
Just another one that was right up there is we passed this daylight savings time bill that we've got a lot of discussion of, which does absolutely nothing until the Congress. Of course, it was a Senate bill, I might add. So it does nothing unless Congress acts, and if Congress acts to allow states to choose daylight savings time, then this state would go permanently on daylight savings time. The most needed legislation as far as we business owners are concerned, or business, we're talking the business community here, the COVID legislation, we did renew that protects businesses from basically being sued by somebody alleged they contracted COVID into your business operation, so that did get.
Very good. So this question will be for, I guess, Tom or Bruce. What was something that passed the House but not the Senate that you felt strongly about?
I'll tackle that because it might not be you can talk about 290. Well, all right. Well, I've got two then, real quickly. House Bill 290 was the right to visit law. You probably, if you didn't experience it, you're unusual. And that's basically if you have a loved one in a nursing home, assisted living, or a hospital, and it could be the birth of a child where husbands couldn't walk in there to be with their spouse. It was really, really frustrating. And a lot of us that had friends that died alone in a hospital room. So House Bill 290 would have codified the fact that family members had a limited amount of time supervised in a safe manner to visit their loved ones. Unfortunately, the Georgia Hospital, we'll call them out, the Georgia Hospital Association fought tooth and nail and threw a lot of monkey wrenches into the bill and basically got it killed. So that was very disappointing. The other bill that I think that was just disappointing is that the House passed a bill that would basically set up a mechanism for district attorneys to be held accountable. Judge, correct me if I'm wrong, but the judiciary has the Judicial Qualifying Commission, is that right, judges? And this would have been similar to the way that the Judicial Qualifying Commission works, is basically if you've got a bad judge, y'all are able to, through your association, to be able to hold them accountable. And there's been frankly, it's just a response, this bill, because there's district attorneys in this state that are on record for saying they will not prosecute crimes, even though they're crimes according to our Georgia code. And it would have been a mechanism to be able to basically hold them accountable and follow the law. It did not pass, and I'm sorry to see that. I understand that it probably does need some fine tuning, and hopefully it'll be a more palatable version that comes back up next year to make sure that if we have laws in Georgia, that there's consistency in the way these laws are applied to everybody.
Yeah, just real quick, one other one that I want to defend our senator, and the senator's not here. This one's going to be laid right at the lieutenant governor's feet. We passed a bill to repeal the sales tax exemption for jet fuel down in Hartsfield, and Lieutenant Governor wouldn't even let them take it up. I understood from quite a few senators, and I haven't talked to Senator Jones, that they had more than enough votes to take care of that and eliminate that sales tax exemption, and the LG just would not let them do it. Sometimes we need to get things done right, and we should have done that.
I've voted against that every time it's come up, not just this year, but 2 years ago as well. So, I mean, if you and I got to pay sales tax at the pump, there's no reason why we should give, big corporations a pass, so I've always been against that fuel tax exemption for the airline companies. But now, I guess the question for me is saying what got out of the Senate didn't get out of the House.
Right.
Well, we just talked about the wonderful bills, the pecan bill and the daylight savings time. So obviously we didn't send that much important stuff over to the House side. But I will say this, a bill that I've worked on in the past, and it really is a no-brainer bill as far as I'm concerned, was the sports betting bill. The online sports betting bill. It is an industry that is currently happening right now. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it would fit right under the Georgia lottery system, which is gambling. And even though I love sports and all that kind of stuff, and I'll make a bet with Bruce every once in a while on the Bulldogs when he's down, but I don't partake in the online betting. But the revenue we would pick up that would go towards the Georgia lottery just by implementing that is almost $100 million a year. And we're always talking about the Georgia lottery being in trouble of not being able to fund children for the next 10 years. And I just felt like that was a real easy way for us to pick up those revenue dollars with an industry that's already happening right now, and then also put some regulations and guidelines around that as well. And it got out of the Senate, but it got stalled in the House, and I just felt like that was something that was easy revenue dollars we could have picked up. And but anyways, we'll take it up next year.
Speaking of the Georgia Lottery, we have Gretchen Corbin coming to our November luncheon to tell us about just how many students in Walton County have been helped with those funds. So, and some other statistics around that as well. So that should be a very interesting program in November. That's all I have. So, what y'all got? What you want to ask?
Somebody's going to come up with a question. I'm going to say this. This is the way the legislature works. We heard a passionate opinion about necessity for online gaming. This going on now, I'll give the proponents of that. On the other end, Gretchen Corbin does a fantastic job of running the Georgia lottery. But I'm older than these two guys, and I was going through my sock drawer the other day, and I found this is early in the session, found my no lottery button from 1992, I believe it was. Some of y'all remember that past discourse when we amended the state constitution to allow it. It's basically state-sponsored gambling. Well, it passed. Bill Miller was the governor, and it passed pretty narrow margins. To its credit, it's done exactly what the people said it should do. It goes to pre-K and pays for colleges. And I think it's gotten a little bit out of control because it's allowed grade inflation I'm sorry, not grade inflation, but tuition inflation in our colleges and universities. When that bill's passed, you could actually afford to go to the University of Georgia. If you're working, you could just about pay your way through school pretty easily. But now that the lottery pays for it, you just see tuitions skyrocket. And hence all the buildings on all the campuses in Georgia. You can argue that it's worked fairly well, absent that grade. I mean, the tuition inflation. On the other hand, I'm dead against the sports betting because you can do it now, Most of it's offshore. It is now legal across federally. The feds say you can do it, but I just don't see it being, I can't see 24 hours a day advertising, telling our youth, specifically our youth, that it's okay to wager your hard-earned dollars. But that's the way the legislature works. So I was speaking against it on our side of the building, while people were speaking for it on the other side of the building. That's just the way the legislative process works.
And I'm the one we can't agree on the fact that the university system has gotten outrageous with the tuition and fee structure. And that is the reason why the lottery has been put on a strain. You're exactly right about that.
Yeah, we agree more often we disagree, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. And that needs to be reined in, because when you get the Zell Miller Scholarship, which was originally set up to pay for your tuition the entire 4 years, as long as you kept a B average. Well, now, if you go to the University of Georgia, you have the Zell Miller Scholarship. I got a nephew right now, got into the University of Georgia. He's a 4-point whatever, a lot smarter than his uncle, I can tell you that. And he's going to have the Zell Miller Scholarship. But it is going to cost them to send him to school, between the fees, the tuition, everything else that's involved. It's going to cost them $10,000 a year. With Zell Miller, with the Zell Miller Scholarship, there's something that's fundamentally wrong with that. And it is an issue that has been going on for several years, and we as legislators are at fault for not reining it in, because we do control the purse strings, and but until you do address that, your spending issue, you're going to have to continually have to come up with ways to fund it, or it will go bankrupt eventually.
We got about 5 minutes. I did see a hand raised back there.
I had a question about the daylight savings time. If the dot on the Georgia Guidestones will align with 12 o'clock and not 1 o'clock. I was there one time. I don't know when the hours align right, but waited for the dot to appear, and it turns out it was at 1 and not 12. So if we as Georgians can make sure it shows up at 12, that'd be nice. I'm going to take that as a no.
I haven't seen the Guidestones. I've read about them. I assume Georgia has pretty great industries, build a lot of heavy equipment. Maybe we can get somebody to get out there and just sort of twist that thing to get it real on.
I think we got time for one more question. George.
As soon as y'all get, excuse me, it's funny. As soon as y'all get the betting through the House and Senate to become law, next thing y'all will start on is the casino gambling. And everybody talks about all this blooming revenue that you're going to get out of it. Nobody talks about the alcohol and the gambling addiction that's going to earn a ton of families in the state of Georgia. Amen.
Amen.
Anybody else have questions?
You know, the casino thing is what is it, we've been up 5 years now, I guess, and you know, it's gotten through the House, but it's never gotten any traction in the Senate. And I even told some casino lobbyists this past year, there's just no appetite in the Senate for it, you know, and you're voting, what you're essentially voting on is a referendum to allow the people to vote whether to allow it or not. I've always said I personally don't have an issue allowing people to vote on the issue. However, it's not been something that I've been pushing in the Senate, and it literally has very little support in the Senate, and that's why for the last 5 years we keep having the MGMs of the world and whoever else coming to lobby at the Capitol, but it's never gone anywhere. So your Senate is staying strong. Your House members, they're the ones that need to work on their morals, so I just don't see it happening anytime soon. But I appreciate your comments.
I'm just glad to see y'all doing something right over there.
You
I'd like to see pari-mutuel wagering to bring the horse industry to this state and bring, according to Nick Nicholson, perhaps president of the Keeneland Association, it could be as much as 50,000 jobs. You know, casinos, that's a different thing. Because, you know, Kentucky's been, you know, in the horse racing business for a long time. I know Church of Downs is trying to get slot machines. I think their legislature actually approved that this year. I know it was quite a battle up there. I haven't kept up with everything. I've heard the arguments. I've seen it, and you know, I spend a lot of time at the horse track with my pastor, and they'll tell you just the opposite of some of that. So, you know, I understand the casino argument though, and there's a lot to that too. It is a different industry than the horse industry that I grew up with. And, so whether it's going to move or not, I don't know. But as long as the stays locked down, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, we are out of time, but I'm sure these gentlemen will hang out for just a few minutes after lunch is over. If you have any other questions you want to catch them, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Creative Artists can offer you a wide range of video production. Call the experts and discuss your project today, whether it's your special event or your company. Creative Artist, 770-267-7368. Creative Artist produces this program you're watching. Call Creative Artist today, 770-267-7368. Creative Artist, they'll put you in the spotlight. Whether you think about it or not, music is a part of our lives. And for Tracy Stever, music is her life. Recently, I had the opportunity to stop by Stever Studios and talk to Tracy about how important teaching music is to the next generation.
I worked for Primerica, and my boss allowed me to have a little side room. So after work, I'd work 9 to 5 as the office manager, and I'd get off and I'd have a few students come up to the office. I had about 3, and over time, a couple years, it just grew, and then I had 5, and then I had 10. And then I met my husband, and he said, why don't you quit that office job, and why don't you just go for it and just do music, since that's really your passion. So I got in touch with Sadie Krozik, and she leased me a couple rooms over here around the back of City Hall. And at that time, I brought on a few more teachers, and we just kept growing and growing, and now we're probably up to about 80 students, and we've got about 6 other teachers that teach here besides myself. Oh, I mean, we have some serious talent here in Monroe. It's just amazing. A lot of, piano players are my specialty, where a lot of my kids really shine. When I was growing up, music was my life. Coming from a broken home, it was something that I could always turn to, that was always there for me. And I can't imagine my life without music. I'm a career musician. That's what I did when I was in middle school, in high school. I went to college for music education, and I just can't imagine a life without music.